Of all the endless questionable fitness practices in vogue today, promoting a high-carb diet for weightlifting is probably the most baffling and ridiculous one. High-carb diets for bodybuilders simply did not exist in the silver and golden eras of bodybuilding and is a modern invention. High-carb diets are also very damaging to muscle tissue, and in fact all tissue in the body becomes unable to burn either fat or glucose in the presence of AGEs, advanced glycation end products, which are a consequence of a high-carb diet. What's more, fat and cholesterol are vital to the muscle building process. Every muscle cell and organelle that grows or is repaired after exercise damage requires cholesterol and omega-3 fatty acids. Neurons are also a massively overlooked aspect of muscle growth, which require large amounts of these precious resources. That's just part of why fatty beef, lamb, and whole eggs are the most useful foods for muscle building, and carbs can be so destructive to the process. So don't just cave into the internet consensus and let yourself suffer for it. Unless you're into that kind of thing. A low-fat diet is terrible for building muscle, especially one using skinless chicken breast for the protein. It is almost totally devoid of taurine, glycine, creatine, carnosine, carnitine, phosphatydlcholine, phosphatydlserine, cholesterol, coenzyme Q10, niacin, alpha-lipoic acid, conjugated linoleic acid, vitamin A, vitamin D, EPA, DHA, zinc, betaine, magnesium, or K2. It is also lower in B vitamins than beef or eggs, and relatively poor in glutathione, spermine, and anserine content. All of these are vital for exercise performance, muscle building, and/or repairing tissue damage from exercise. Yet most of them are simply never mentioned in the context of sports nutrition, and likely some are totally unknown to viewers. What's more, eating whole eggs has been shown to be more anabolic than eating just egg white protein, or egg white protein with carbs, even after BCAAs and total protein are equalized.
We as a culture are so obsessed on protein and protein powders, and we love protein powders. Protein matters, without a doubt. It is so relevant. But we know in humans, when you add fat to that protein, it helps the protein work better. This was a study that looked at muscle protein synthesis. When they gave exercising men a protein load, muscle protein synthesis was significantly increased. When they gave them a balance, a 1-to-1 by mass of protein and fat, there was a significant effect even beyond just the protein alone. So it's almost like these foods that always come together, these macronutrients, they were designed to come together. In nature, if you're looking for protein, you always get fat with it. There is no exception to this.
Even if you don't care about muscle, you should care about what builds muscle and gives strength. Many of the things that are shown to give more strength in the elderly do so because of their health effects, such as niacin in fish oil. DHA and EPA in fish oil are found in all animal products, including eggs, and this is no doubt part of why eggs show increased anabolism, but in reality it is the total nutrition package that's needed. All of the elements mentioned earlier are important not just for muscle building, but for all health. The immune system, for example, is what repairs exercise-induced damage, and it's also what repairs all the damage of aging. So you can't just decouple these from each other. You have to look at these processes as part of your total health package. Whatever your fitness goals are, performance should be at the top of the list. This is especially true for bodybuilding because the volume of exercise you can perform in a single set directly depends on your strength. In fact, the volume you can lift in a single set is not dependent on strength in a linear manner, but in a greater than linear manner. When your strength goes up by a certain amount at the top end, then your strength on a set of 10 will go up proportionally even more. That's because the weight between your 1 rep max and your 10 rep max stays relatively constant. If you could squat 200 pounds as your maximum, you'd probably be able to squat around 100 pounds for your 10 rep max. If you trained for years and became a world record breaking lifter, and you finally managed to squat 1,000 pounds, your 10 rep max would be not 5 times more at 500 pounds, it would be 9 times more at about 900 pounds. So while your squat went up 5 times as high in your 1 rep max, your 10 rep max went up 9 times as high. It might sound crazy if you haven't experienced it, but while I never got any lifts up to 1,000 pounds, I have found that this principle always held true for me. This will vary a bit from person to person, but generally holds surprisingly true. Since you can only recover from so many sets of exercise, getting strong should be your number one goal, especially early on when you will be relatively weak and your 1 rep max and 10 rep max will have the highest difference in total volume. And by volume I simply mean the total amount of weight lifted. However, that doesn't mean you need to max out all the time. In fact, I very seldom do, and over the years I've found that one single set in the 3 to 5 rep range, in addition to your other lifts, is enough to slowly increase your strength over time. Sets of 10, on the other hand, offer an ideal range to add volume to your workout without taxing your tendons too much or breaking down your muscle tissue too much, which is what happens at the higher rep ranges like 20 and 30. You might be tempted to do only sets of 10, but these do not engage all your muscle fibers in a single set, so many of your fibers will not get an optimal workout. That's also why you can't get super strong doing calisthenics. You simply have to push your muscles close to their max strength, or they're not going to grow as much as if you did. Since strength equals performance for weightlifting, then if carbs help in this area, then we should definitely be taking them. But it turns out that they don't help at all.
Here's the crazy thing to say. There is no dose response for carbohydrates and any performance increase with statistical significance. So you can have 5 grams, you can have 25 grams, you can have 50 grams. All of them do exactly the same thing. 0.
It's been shown time and again that adding carbs to a high protein meal won't increase muscle protein synthesis. And it's also shown it simply does nothing positive for weightlifting performance. In fact, there's many ways carbs can impede your performance, such as damaging your mitochondria. Mitochondrial health is very important for muscle tissue, which taken as a whole is the biggest reservoir of mitochondria in the entire body. AGEs, or advanced glycation end products, have been shown to cause fat to accumulate in myocytes in the heart and cause them to be dysfunctional. This same effect happens in skeletal muscle tissue, what we normally think of as simply muscle, and in fact it happens in virtually every kind of cell in the body. And it's definitely something that's not good for performance or for health. It's also terrible when it comes to aging your skin and organs, as I've mentioned a few times in the past. These AGEs come exclusively from metabolic syndrome driven by excessive carbs, especially from fructose, which does great harm to the body when taken in anything but tiny doses. When you have a fatty liver, you also produce fructose in the body itself, which is part of why this is so damaging. While glucose glycates proteins in the body, which creates AGEs, fructose does this 7 to 10 times more strongly, and worse, this damage does not show up on A1C scores. Thankfully for those who fast, liver fat is quickly removed from the body, and this unfortunate phenomenon does not occur. Your liver is responsible for keeping the bloodstream supplied with glucose, and when you fast, it does this first by turning liver fat into glucose. Be aware, however, that this requires choline, and without it, you cannot get the fat out of your liver. Long before bodybuilders started using special supplements, bodybuilding enthusiasts of the early 20th century had long perfected the perfect diet needed for muscle growth. This is also the diet full of all the nutrients you need to be healthy. This held on for some time even after the special supplements were around, and was used by many of the best bodybuilders of all time, such as Arnold Schwarzenegger and Serge Nubret. Nubret famously ate up to 10 pounds of horse meat in a day, and often ate meat-only diets for short periods of time. Rick Drassen was also a golden age bodybuilder who was strictly low carb, and he worked out with Arnold. He also ate with him regularly in the heyday of Gold's Gym, and not only Arnold, but everyone else with him ate in the same low-carb manner when this happened.
But a lot of you write into me, and I've posted this many times about the diet of the 70s because you questioned me on our carb intake and our protein intake when we trained so hard. And many of you asked, it's impossible to train and get big on the amount of carbs that we were taking in. Well, no, it's not. We would take protein in at least 5 times a day. And it would be comprised of, let's say for example, breakfast would be a hamburger patty and eggs, or hamburger patty, eggs, and cottage cheese, or maybe a turkey patty and eggs and cottage cheese, and maybe a small protein drink. Then it would be to the gym. Then we'd train. If I got done early enough, there'd be another little protein drink, but I'd mix it with water. If not, I'd go directly to lunch. And usually Arnold and I would go, and a few guys, and we go to Zookie's Delicatessen on 5th and Wilshire, which is our hangout, and we get a cheese omelet with cottage cheese and maybe a burger patty to match. So today when you see that and you wonder why we did what we did and why we gained that, is because we trained heavy, we trained hard, and we ate good. And the carbs I didn't count, but I know that it was pretty low. I mean, I wouldn't eat pasta, I wouldn't eat rice, I wouldn't eat white bread or white sugar. That was just no, not at all. If I went somewhere and they had cookies and this and that, I'd just say no. I just won't eat it. Even though I like them, I wouldn't do it.
The gallon of milk a day diet has become very famous again recently, but what most people don't realize is that at the time it became popular, it was very difficult to put on weight for most people. Carb-rich foods were not the norm, and it can be quite difficult to consume large amounts of meat. The 300 carb day a diet promoted by the diabetes pyramid was nothing at all like what most people ate at the time, and breakfast cereals simply did not exist. Aside from a relatively low-carb diet, many of these bodybuilders of yesteryear also fasted. Vince Girondo is a huge advocate of both fasting and a low-carb diet, especially when it came to contest prep. Arnold actually trained with Girondo when he came to America, and both Arnold and Nubret practiced fasting, though Serge was much better known for this, being a proponent of eating one big meal every day. And I believe this is another anabolic practice. For example, fasting releases stem cells and helps produce more neurons in the brain. This may seem irrelevant, but neurons are critically important for muscle growth, and particularly for increasing your strength. One of the main reasons older men lose their leg strength is due to motor neuron death with age, but fasting can stop or even reverse this trend. This is probably the main reason eggs are anabolic regardless of protein content. They contain all the nutrients needed for neuronal growth, which is a necessary part of muscle development. Fasting can also increase testosterone and reduce estrogen, and even increase the size of a man's testes through growth hormone release. During the fast, testosterone goes down, but luteinizing hormone and growth hormone go up. So after the fast is over, testosterone shoots through the roof. I know from experience that by now someone is already typing up a storm and saying that mechanisms don't matter and only long-term randomized placebo-controlled trials can prove something like fasting can improve muscle size. I know because I've heard it many times, but the fact of the matter is in all these trials people do gain lean tissue, but that's not what the trials are there for, so of course you're not able to measure it in a significant manner. Ironically, no one has ever conducted a single long-term, randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial on muscle hypertrophy of any kind. So if this is what you put your faith in for exercise science, you can just forget it. All trials are a few weeks, up to a month or two, and that's because of the prohibitive expense. Billion-dollar trials do happen in nutrition, but it's simply never going to happen when studying muscle growth because there's no money to be made. When people do talk about hypertrophy studies, they are strictly talking about the short term. This leaves an unspoken bit of inductive reasoning in each of these statements that would get you laughed out of any mathematics class, especially one involving proofs. You simply can't assume that if a theorem holds true for the first few steps, that it's going to hold true forever. That is why the only way to guide our efforts is to look at basic physiology and make our own personal experiments and see what works for us. And most importantly, what works for us in the long term. So take studies saying higher volume means more hypertrophy with a grain of salt. Doing more works out well in the short term, but it just plateaus you faster and harder due to overworking yourself. This gives you the illusion that you can no longer progress, and once you believe that, it's true. You may max out at 315 pounds and think that's just your quote-unquote natural limit, but it may be much higher. It may be 405, it may be even 450. And that's why we can't oversimplify nutrition into simply eating enough protein and filling the rest of our diet with junk food. And rice is a junk food, it's just worthless and nutritionless. There's no nutrition in rice whatsoever. You also shouldn't listen to any wacko who calls grass-fed salami an ultra-processed, unhealthy food that's going to give you cancer.
Oh God. Grass-fed or farmer's market, it doesn't really matter. Like, these are all still ultra-processed foods that should be enjoyed in moderation.
She's an unbeliever. She taints us.
In reality, there's a great deal of complexity to the question of nutrition for muscle growth.
As much as I am an advocate of prioritizing protein, if you're doing that at the expense of fat, I believe in particular, you are starting to, you are circumventing normal human nutrition. And someone could, and I would say that meat is the perfect example. Meat and eggs, to me, represent this beautiful mix of fat and protein together. Chicken doesn't play by the same rules. And tellingly, we never used to eat chicken. This was not a meat source for our ancestors. We had chickens for the eggs. Now, if you look at chicken consumption, it went from almost nothing 100 years ago to being like maybe the single highest source of protein in the diet. I think, as much as I love chicken, eating them, namely, I do think that if you are focusing your protein on just chicken, you are going to be devoid of fats. And frankly, you may be mitigating the anabolic effects of that protein.
Chicken is probably fine if you eat the whole bird. The problem is that most people have gotten the idea in their heads to only eat boneless, skinless chicken breast. This harkens back to the days when bodybuilders ramped up their use of special supplements and became paranoid about heart attacks. This is a very valid fear because they stimulate prostaglandins in the opposite manner of aspirin, and this causes dramatically increased clotting. This promotes heart disease to a very strong degree. And unfortunately, our corrupt health system promotes a nonsense low-fat diet as being heart healthy, and that's what these people have latched onto as the solution. This is the origin of the idea of eating clean, staying away from animal fats and from sugar because of the supposed health benefits of doing so. While sugar and refined foods have many problems, the campaign against cholesterol and animal fat was waged by the food industry and has no basis in fact. It exists only to increase corporate profits by the promotion of junk food, like sugar and the highly lethal vegetable oil.
What do you hear? The sound of money!
This is also when rice became popular with bodybuilders, as these supplements massively drive up appetite and energy needs, and healthy animal fats are the most expensive source of nutrition for the body. And it also offers a convenient package for contest preps because rice is almost pure carb, while chicken breast is almost pure protein, making it very easy to measure out exacting amounts. Carbohydrate consumption tends to skyrocket cortisol over time, which is highly catabolic. This occurs as a response to insulin secretion, so when insulin is chronically high, you will always have chronically elevated cortisol as well. And while cortisol is not damaging while insulin is low, while insulin is high, it can only produce glucose from protein in the body, in a very destructive manner, especially from the collagen in your body. It should also be noted that one of the strongest ways that these special supplements bodybuilders take to increase muscle is by blocking the catabolic effects of cortisol. This is one of many reasons it's a terrible idea from non-enhanced lifters to listen to these enhanced influencers. And sadly, most of them are enhanced, whether they openly admit to it or not. A high-carb diet elevates thyroid hormone, and while thyroid hormone is necessary, it is also a very catabolic hormone. While it is often claimed that it increases basal metabolism, in reality your basal metabolism comes from mitochondrial activity within your lean tissue, which thyroid hormone is destructive to. On the other hand, fasting in a low-carb diet dramatically boosts mitochondrial health, and those on a keto diet are shown to have 4 times the mitochondria as those eating a typical diet, and that they are healthier to boot. Carbs also destroy your glycocalyx, the lining around your blood vessels. This not only protects your arteries from damage, but it is also where your body's stores of nitric oxide reside. When your glycocalyx is damaged, your blood vessels simply cannot vasodilate properly. Which is ironic because many bodybuilders take expensive supplements, specifically to boost NO levels, while at the same time destroying their ability to produce nitric oxide. A single glass of orange juice is enough to essentially destroy the glycocalyx, which takes 12 hours to regenerate. This is also yet another factor that shows fewer meals closer together is better for your health than constantly spiking your blood sugar with carby meals and snacks. While beef and lamb are far more nutritious than chicken breast and rice, the cuts of meat and preparation methods today do not harness all the taurine and glycine our ancestors would have gotten. Taurine is in the dark meats and organs, especially the heart and tongue, and glycine is in the skin and bones. Therefore, it is prudent to supplement these if you are not taking special dietary measures to get the full 20 grams a day as estimated that our ancestors consumed. Betaine is also lacking in most diets. The most common abundant source is wheat germ. Unless daily wheat germ is consumed, it is also prudent to supplement this as well, or to make sure you get plenty of choline, which has many of the same benefits. This is found mainly in eggs. Foods like sardine and other fatty fish, eggs, raw cheese, milk, bone broth, and organ meats can all contribute vital parts to human nutrition, and this is especially true regarding muscle building. These foods can also help you control your hunger better, especially when you keep your carbs low. So you won't have to take such draconian measures trying to keep yourself from overeating and gaining weight and undoing all of your hard work.
You want it, don't you, fat boy? You want that donut? Go ahead and have a bite. Just a little bite. One little bite won't hurt you.